In 2009, James Cameron introduced a world unlike anything audiences had ever seen before with his record-breaking hit, Avatar. The floating mountains and bioluminescent forests of Pandora were not only visually striking, but unlike anything people could have possibly imagined. And while the plot unapologetically shared similarities to other stories, it can't be denied that James Cameron created an experience that resonated with virtually everyone. But after 13 years to build on the first Avatar, it appears The Way of Water's single greatest strength is also its single greatest flaw, James Cameron himself. It's no secret, a lot of time went into perfecting the technology to make Avatar 2 and its 30-some-odd sequels in development, but that comes with a heavy cost. Every other component of this movie suffers because of that focus on technology. Whereas floating mountains and bioluminescent forests were very much groundbreaking concepts, from a spectacle standpoint, water isn't nearly as impressive when you can see it in the real world. Not to mention, we spend very little time underwater in this movie, which is nothing but a missed opportunity when it comes to world building. To be honest, there's very little world building to be had, and don't try to convince me that reskinning Ikron to Elu counts. Pair this with the gimmick that is 3D, and the movie instantly feels dated. But more than feeling dated, the movie's fairly repetitive. The plot is basic and really just rehashes the first movie in a new setting. The big bad RDA has returned. Quaritch has been reincarnated in an avatar, and he's hell-bent as ever on killing Jake and Kiri. On more than one occasion, he uses their kids as bait, just so they can come to the rescue, and then we repeat the cycle. And even though the RDA's main initiative is to colonize Pandora, they've got a nice side hustle going where they kill sentient whales to harvest their brains, so we get a Free Willy in space subplot. But that's not the only story The Way of Water copies. We also get a Mowgli Tarzan knockoff with Spider, and as much as James Cameron will try to deny this, we also get some Star Wars vibes with the dynamic between Spider and Quaritch, shadowing Luke and Vader. We've seen it done before, so the movie becomes very predictable. Now, what's worse than a predictable movie are boring characters, and unfortunately, The Way of Water is drowning in them. It becomes clear quite early this isn't Jake and Neytiri's story as much as it's their son Loak's. Jake and Neytiri make the decision to abandon their clan from the first Avatar, and then take a back seat for the rest of the movie. Neytiri more so than Jake. She really only shows up to hiss, cry, or wail. No, not that kind of wail. But getting back to Loak, we get the cliche middle child trying to figure things out protagonist. He's the most compelling character, but that's only because we follow his journey. Other characters fail to make an impact, like Loak's older brother. Jake says verbatim that Loak will get his older brother killed, so there's zero element of surprise when he does die. There doesn't seem to be that many stakes going into the movie, knowing James Cameron has the next 20 years of installments planned. If somebody dies, just plug him into a new body and boot him back up. No character is a better example of no stakes than Kiri, the daughter of Dr. Augustine from the first movie, and a Mary Sue in her own right. It appears James Cameron has poised her to be his own Pandoran superhero. Awa Assemble! This is pretty rich, coming from the same man who's gone out of his way to criticize the superhero genre. Cameron called out Marvel's VFX for Thanos, when, truth be told, a character like Thanos has more depth than any character in this movie. And for what it's worth, this mindset of anything you can do, I can do better, only fractures the fan base. Ultimately, The Way of Water is a fun experience, but it lacks the repeatability factor found in the first Avatar. It demonstrates how too much of one thing can be a detriment, and in this case that one thing is James Cameron. That's not to say this is a bad movie, because there are real technological feats pulled off to bring it to life, but the pretty visuals don't make up for the shallow story. As such, the finished product comes across much more as a movie for James Cameron, versus a movie by James Cameron.